So this is Domo. Let me just orient you on what we're looking at. Right now we're on my favorites page, which is just a page where I as a Domo user can save specific cards or visualizations that are interesting to me. And we're going to go through some examples of these. But I want to start off by talking about business optimization and the ability to answer business questions quickly, because that's what we're all about. So to illustrate, I'm going to come here to the marketing page. And when I click on marketing, you can see that my data is structured in a couple different ways. First off, I have this top level sort of dashboard view, and I've got these collections is what we call them. These are collapsible, so you can open or close them, but you can see that they're structured by business question. So I'm going to collapse this for just a second to illustrate. Remember our example about customer acquisition? Well, consider how this would change the way you run your business if instead of having to ask, hey, what's our customer acquisition cost? Reaching out to an analyst, they say, great, I'll get that to you. I've got some other things prioritized ahead of you. You're going to have to wait in line. I'll give you a report a week later on a SharePoint site or something like that in a static presentation that's out of date the minute you get it. And if you have questions and you want to know, you want to drill into it more, then we'll have to sit down and do a working session to go through that. Instead of that frustration for both the business user and the analyst who's having to constantly spit out these reports over and over again, now we've got a place where we can just open up this collection and see cards or interactive visualizations directly related to, in this case, customer acquisition. How effective are we at acquiring customers? So you can see in this first card, it's a very simple card. It's showing me customer acquisition cost. I can see up here the top level average acquisition cost over a 12-month period. I can also see down below the revenue we're bringing in by month and then our acquisition cost. So I can see sort of the delta between those two to make sure that our profitability is going well. In addition, you can see that I've got a little projected revenue for the rest of the month. This is great, especially for leadership who comes into this card and they don't want to see a drop off at the end of every period because April's not finished yet. Now these cards are very interactive. So let's say I only want to see maybe from October on. I can very easily open this up. Maybe I don't care about revenue right now. I only want to see acquisition cost. I can minimize or maximize that. I can also change the date grain here. I can change the way the card looks. So I have a chart picker that allows me to see maybe I want to view this in a different way. I can do that all in real time, automatically here, interactively. It allows me to explore this data very easily. But let's come back here. Beyond that, it's great to be able to see this information and have a view that allows me to interact with it. But beyond that, I also have the ability to combine data from multiple sources to get new insights. So let's take this more advanced example. This example is showing me the cost to acquire and service every $1 of revenue we bring in. So in this case, we're seeing the ability to track after we've brought them in, how much is it costing us to service them. So I've turned this off for a second just to illustrate. I want to just show you. Let's say that in a general sense, this would normally what I would get. I would pull in marketing spend per, and this is sales qualified lead, and then average revenue per sale, and I would look at the difference between those. This is essentially the ROI, right, on how much every dollar of marketing is getting me. So in this case, I can see that some of these different industries that we're targeting might be more profitable than others or better than others, but with Domo bringing in this service data, so you can see down here at the bottom, this data is coming from everything from our marketing channels to our CRM tool, which in this case is Salesforce, from SAP, which is bringing in our client services data. All this data is coming together in Domo to power up this card. Because of that, now I can turn on this little nifty triangle here, and this triangle is showing me the actual cost to acquire and service every $1 of revenue. So you can see on this triangle, everywhere where a triangle is above the $1 line here, I'm actually losing money on every dollar of revenue I'm bringing in because they're too expensive to service. So now consider how that changes the way I make a business decision. Instead of having to come in and see that, okay, you know what, it looks like government's really an efficient and good industry for us to target because I'm spending low on marketing, I'm getting a lot of revenue, but they're also very expensive customers. So I can actually turn this on and see, okay, yeah, I'm actually losing money on these guys. And then your next question would be, why am I losing money on them? Well, instead of having to go and ask your analyst to go pull some report for you, I have this information now in Domo. I have the relevant data that I need This platform is interactive, it's intuitive. I can just simply drill in here. I can drill in and see, okay, here are the expenses that we've got. Here's the profit. Here's the discounts we're giving them, the cost per sales qualified lead, which we've already established is low. But look at implementation costs. They're really high for these guys. Look at travel and client expenses. So we're spending a lot to come out to implement them, to go and travel to do that implementation and other interactions we're having with them. Let's find a way to bring this down. And now I've got this information right where I need it, when I need it, available to me. So let's talk explicitly about bringing data into Domo, because that's a very important part of this whole equation. These reports that I'm showing you, these visualizations, are only as good as the ability to bring in data quickly and easily. So I'm going to come here to the data center, and you'll see down here, this is a cool little interactive visual representation of our data warehouse, of the data that's currently being stored in Domo. You can see that Vertica right now is updating. You can see the data streaming in there. And we've got all sorts of different data sources out here in this outer rim, and then these are areas where we've joined data together, and I can see where my data joins are coming from. You know, Workfronts and Qualtrics, for example, tracking probably employee responses to a survey or something like that. But I asked you to look up here at the top for just a second, and let's talk about the 4 key ways that we connect to your data. The first is by connecting to cloud apps. This is very straightforward. If you've got data that's living in a cloud application somewhere, maybe it's QuickBooks Online, maybe it's Adobe Analytics for your website data, we've got over 450 pre-built connectors that we've built to allow you to connect to that data easily. I'm going to show you those in just a second and talk more about those, but I'm going to come back to that. We also can connect to your files. So if I click in here, you can see that we've got data connectors for everything from CSV file, an Excel file, even a PowerPoint file. If you've got XML data, or you're using QuickBase, Intuit, we can connect to all these different types of data very easily through these pre-built connectors. Let's say that you've got a database that you use, an online database. Well, if you come in here to data connectors for databases, we can connect to the Salesforce database, to Amazon Redshift. If you've got a SQL database, we can connect to that via MySQL or Hadoop or MongoDB. Microsoft Access. So we provide lots of different abilities to connect to online data through databases. Also, if you've got on-prem data, we have an on-prem data acquisition tool called Workbench that allows you to bring in data from a variety of different data types and sources in an automated, secure, encrypted way. Everything from ODBC to OLAP. I mentioned QuickBooks Online, but we can also connect to QuickBooks on desktop via Workbench. This is very easy to set up and use and operationalize so that it's automated and it brings your data in when you need it. And finally, if you have an online source of data that we don't already have a connector for, we do expose our API so you can build an API connector that way. Let's go back and talk about cloud apps for a second, because this is one that is always really interesting to our users. So like I said, we have over 450 of these. This demo instance of Domo has 346 showing. That's just how many we've made available to illustrate the point here. But there are others. So if you're looking for a specific connector and you don't see it on this list, or you're wondering about it, feel free to just reach out to us and we'll let you know how we can connect to it. Suffice it to say, though, that we've made it our priority to make sure that if there is data out there, we're going to make it easy for you to connect to it somehow, some way. So you can see we've got apps here like Concur, and I mentioned QuickBooks and NetSuite for the finance people out there. We've got connectors to basically any marketing type of tool you would ever want to use, from channel leads, etc. We connect to Jira, so if you're doing project management or development work, we can track that in Domo. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of these guys. Let me show you how easy one of these is to use. I'm going to use the DocuSign example as our example today, this connector. So let's say that I track signatures in DocuSign, and that's how I get signatures for my closed won deals. And I want to come in here and track DocuSign. So I can come in here and just enter my credentials for DocuSign. Very straightforward and easy. Then I can simply fill out the details of what I want to connect to, like account information or something like that. And finally, I can schedule how frequently I want that data to come in. This is very powerful because with this DocuSign connector, for instance, we can bring in data up to every 15 minutes. So as of every 15 minutes, you know that this data is fresh, it's up to date, it's being brought into Domo. So these are how our connectors work. They're very straightforward. In a matter of minutes, we can have DocuSign data streaming into Domo. A couple of you mentioned that you wanted to be able to merge data from multiple sources as well. So I'm going to really quickly illustrate that. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go to the data flow section. Now, if you know SQL or some other query language like Redshift, and you want to use that to build data flows in Domo, that's awesome. We provide the functionality and the ability to write those queries and write that code right in Domo's interface. However, for a lot of us, like myself, who are not as familiar with those types of coding languages, we provide a drag and drop tool called Magic ETL that allows us to connect to this data very quickly and easily. So I'm going to show you a very basic example of that. If I come here and I go to Magic ETL, and let's see here. So I've got Facebook posts and survey results. So if I come into this one, I can now see that in this case, we're connecting two input data sets. And you know what? In this case, we're connecting Facebook and SurveyMonkey, and we're bringing them both together to power a new combined data set that now has both of the data for these two solutions in it. Let me show you an example of how we'd actually build one of those. So if I come back here to the data warehouse, and I'm going to go to ETL, which is a magic tool, you can see this is a drag and drop tool where I can simply drag in input data sets. I can have more than two if I want. I can have 3 or 4 or however many I want. I just select what data I want to power up. So maybe I want to do, let's do Adobe Analytics campaigns for one, and for the other, I'm going to do exact target. The benefit of this is that now I'm going to track these two data sources, and I'm going to see for these two how emails that I'm sending out from exact target are impacting visits to my website. So there's a lot more I can do today that I don't have time to show you. I can add calculated fields. I could dedupe or group data together if I need to. But in this case, I'm just going to do a simple join. So I come in here, I drag these two to the join. I choose what I want to join on. I want Adobe Analytics and exact target. In this case, I should probably join on date. That's the easiest field for our example. And then I can run this and power up this data and create an output data set that's now going to start giving me this data together. So let me show you what the output of that would look like. And obviously, I'm going through this super quickly. But this is just a very basic example. So let's come over here to, I believe it's under Attract and Engage. Maybe. I think I've got it under my favorites here. And I don't. So they've moved some things around on me. Give me just a second to see if I can find this. Here we go. So in this case, now I've got a card that I can build off of that output data set. I didn't have to do any coding or anything like that. I simply built a card that's showing me in blue the number of emails sent from exact target, and in green the number of website visits we've received. So I can see if there's any correlation between an email we sent out, like this one, and a day where we got high web traffic. And I was able to do that all on my own without having to bring in or incorporate any sort of analyst. And now you can see at the bottom, we've got exact target plus Adobe Analytics powering this data set. So for time's sake, a couple other things I want to show you today. Beyond the ability to simply bring data together and visualize it in Domo, we do provide more advanced visualization options as well. So I want to come here to the Domo apps and show you some of the more advanced applications we provide that it can allow you to get more value and more benefit out of Domo. For instance, we have a predictive toolkit in Domo. And when I say an app, I mean a more advanced visualization that provides sometimes analytics, sometimes it provides advanced calculations in the background, so you can interact with the system and literally build an application right on our interface. This is an app that was built by one of our partners, Big Squid, and there are literally thousands of apps like these in our Domo App Store, which is available to you when you purchase Domo. A lot of the apps are free. Some of the more advanced ones, like this one, you can purchase for your company. This one is a predictive toolkit that's allowing me to add predictive right into the Domo experience. So I'm going to open this one up so we can see a little better because this window that we are demoing in is a little bit smaller than your normal size window. But in this case, I can select the data I want to bring in. Like I can bring in this Excel file, customer cancellations. And then I can say, what do you want to predict? Well, I want to see how cancellations are going to go next month. And I'm concerned about whether or not we're going to stay on track for our cancellation reduction goal that we've set. So I simply select cancellation, select what I want to predict, and then I can build a predictive model. Big Squid's going to do it for me. They're going to build a predictive forecast right away that I can now interact with and see, okay, here's how our cancellations might go. You can see it gives me a score in this case, which is a B+, so it's pretty good. There may be some places that I can improve on. I can visualize my forecast through different cards if I choose to down here, and I can create some additional models off this. Very easy to do, very straightforward, built all in Domo's interface. Finally, the last thing I want to show you today is the ability to collaborate around data right in Domo. So I'm going to come over here to the sales page. I'm going to go to the sales trends by day card, and I'm going to open up Buzz, our collaboration platform, which is always available to you over on the right-hand panel in Domo. You can have it open if you want, or you can close it so you can see things a little bit better. But these conversations are tied directly to the data. So in this case, we've got revenue by day. You can see that today we had a pretty good spike in revenue. If I drill in here, I can see that most of this revenue came from Lance Rivas. He closed, over 300K, almost 400K in revenue today. And I've got a conversation happening over on the right in Buzz. The value of this is that now we can have conversations right where the data lives. We can discuss things as they're happening real time in Domo. So for instance, Frank Mitchell here, who happens to be the CFO, finance executive here, if we hover over him, we can see he's saying, hey, speaking of spending, travel costs are also way up. And then he references another card in Domo right in the Buzz chat to show what he means. So now we can have a conversation. We're all on the same page. We're all reading out of the same books, as they say. And now I can open up this card right from the chat window and see, yeah, you know what? This is expenses, travel expenses in most cases. This is the amount of revenue we're bringing in. And this big, delta in between it's eating into our profitability. This is going to kill our profitability for the quarter if we don't do something about it and fast. And so that's a conversation we can now have about how we're going to reduce those expenses to improve profitability without having to call a freakout meeting, without having to spend the first 20 minutes of that meeting, having everyone get onto the same page. And now this is all available to me. I can discuss it and see this power right in Domo. Again, as I mentioned, we're maniacally focused on making it easy for business users to get answers to the questions they need to better run their business. It isn't always about just exploring data or finding interesting insights. It's about, I have a specific business question I need to answer. How am I going to visualize it in a way that allows me to do that? How am I going to ask questions around it and interact with my colleagues so that we can take action faster? How am I going to bring the data in I need to answer the question? So we're out of time for today. I tried to focus on what you all said was most important to you in the survey. There's a couple other things I didn't have time to get to today, like mobile. Our mobile experience is first class. I would like to tell you that everything that we showed you today on desktop is automatically available to you on mobile, meaning you don't have to build mobile versions of reports. When you buy Domo and you build a card on Domo Desktop, that card is automatically available to you on your phone or tablet, on iPhone or Android, and ready to go for you to view.